Preparation for the Risk Management Professional exam. RMP questions explained. In this video, we will explain the exam questions you can expect during the Risk Management Professional exam and give you advice on how to help analyze and answer the questions. The video is divided into the following topics: exam questions explained and example exam questions. So let's first look at the exam questions explained. So as mentioned earlier, you should expect 170 questions in 5 key areas, of which the majority will be scored. So the 5 areas: risk strategy planning, stakeholder engagement, risk process facilitation, risk monitoring and reporting, perform specialized risk analysis. Those are the areas that questions will happen in. Now, all the questions will be multiple choice with only one correct answer. So you should not see that you need more than one answer. There is no time restriction on individual questions. Remember, you have 3.5 hours to the exam. And the system allows you to mark questions as you go through the exam. So you can put a flag on a question, and on the very last screen you will be able to see the list of all the 150 questions, as well as the flag if it's marked or not. And you will be able to, from that screen, jump back to that question, read it again, change your answer, update the mark. And then once you finish all the answers and you get to the last screen, once you have finished, jump back to a question, you have perhaps changed your answer, you can then click and go back to the summary screen. Or you can go forward one or backward one. So you can, in principle, scroll through all the questions one more time. So the tip here is you should decide on a system. Example: as you go along the questions, you mark those questions that you are not sure is correctly answered. Or you can decide to mark the questions which you are 100% sure of or confident is correct answered. Either way, my advice is you decide on a system and you use that mark as a way of dividing your question and the answers into 2 groups. So when you get to the end, you know that now, before finishing the exam, you need to go back to either the questions that has marked with a flag or the questions that do not have a mark. And then you spend the last part of the time to go through those questions. And you can only do that if you keep a watch out for the time. So make a timetable before you begin and say, I want X minutes per question. Now, you will not be allowed to wear your watch. That will be taken away from you if you have a watch on. But you will have a timer on the screen. So you can still make the timetable and say, if I don't have the answer within 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, I will move on to the next question. So put this aggressively. Use the marking functionality to divide your answers into a bucket which those you are confident with and you don't want to revisit them, and those questions where you want to go back and have a look at the end. Now, one thing here is that you might get new knowledge during the exam. Example: you have a question, you answer it, and you believe it's correct, or you are in doubt. Either way, but you answer the question. 10 questions further along the way, you might get a question which partly give you the answer to the previous question. And once you see that question and you answer it, you might say, hey, with this question and the way that this is put, actually I need to go back and check that I did that question, answer that question correctly. Now, you might and you might not have put a mark on that question. What you do is you put a note on your piece of paper. So the paper is used, the note paper, in my opinion, you should use for three purposes. One or two of the pages you use for your preparation sheet. One page or whatever you need, you use as you go along if you need to make drawings, calculations, which you will for some of the advanced calculations. So you can use that to draw or whatever it might be to help you in the moment. And one piece of paper is the list or the log of notes that when you get to the end, you need to remember this and you need to go back. So if you get to that question where you suddenly get new knowledge, write down the number of the question number 35, write a short note quickly, and then a note, and then put that aside. Continue focusing on the next question. When you get to the end and you do your review, now you look at your summary screen, which the system will present to you with the questions, all the questions listed, and with the flag listed. You look at that and you look at your note paper, and now you spend a reserved portion of time reviewing those flagged or non-flagged questions and addressing those notes that you took along the way. But for this to work, you need to make sure that you make yourself a timetable here. If you do not do that, you will not have time at the end. So do not get stuck. It is not a pass for 100% correct questions. So you have some room for errors. So get going. Don't think too much. And as a lot of people say, your first choice is often the right one. Well, you can't generalize, but if you, after reading the question again, you are still in doubt, and the possible answers that you believe are correct, of those answers, your first choice is there, then my recommendation would be stick with your first choice. If you really have one or more answers that is equally possible, and you do not know which one to choose the first choice. Then again, you have a rule set. You don't need to get confused. You can focus on eliminating the questions that is not the correct answer. And once you get, if you have that situation, you have a rule set. You have made up your mind. I'll use my first choice. Do it. Move on. Spend your time on other questions, which you might, by applying a little bit more time, making a drawing, looking at your notes, have been through all the questions, you might be able to derive a more correct answer. So with that, let's try and look at some example questions and give you some more tools to how to answer this. So let's take an example question here. What is secondary risk? The second risk in the risk log, residual risk, risk caused by a response to another risk, risk that is unlikely to occur. So one of these is the correct answer, and the correct answer is that a secondary risk is a risk caused by a response to another risk. Now, I know this, and I have the book here in front of me. If you are sitting at the exam and you do not know the answer, don't focus on what is the correct answer. Start by eliminating the wrong answers. So analyze the question and eliminate the wrong answers. So in this case, secondary risk in the risk log, it's absolutely not true. order of the risk in your risk log has nothing to do with the name of the risk. Then it should be the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and that's not how things work. So this is a trick, or just a filler, an answer that's just put in there to confuse you. So there's not such things, you can rule that out. Residual risk. This is one of the terms you need to know. Residual risk, the definition is that this is a risk. Residual risk are risks that exist even after a response to a risk has been taken. So you need to know that definition. If you know that definition, you can rule this out. That secondary risk is a definition in the curriculum. Residual risk is a definition, meaning secondary risk, the answer cannot be another definition. So you can rule that out. Risk that is unlikely to occur. How the probability for a risk to occur is defined by your risk analysis of the risk, and it's not and after your analysis you assign a probability value. Low probability risk is not named differently as high probability risk. So again, this is rubbish. This is absolutely nothing to do with secondary risk. So you can rule that out. So if you forget about the correct answer, put your finger on top of the screen. Forget about this, and just look at the questions and rule out the wrong answers. You should only have this one left. Now, not all questions are as easy as this, and you might only be able to rule out one or two of the answers, and you are still left with several possibilities. In that case, you need to dig deep, find your knowledge, use your worksheet that you prepared. If it's a definition, if it's a formula, again, you might have it on your worksheet. And if you still cannot find it and you have two risks that is equally possible, mark the one, put the answer in the one that was your first choice, flag it or not flag it depending on your system, and when you get to the end of the exam, go back to it. Don't let it stop you. Look at your time, stick with your rule, and move on. So another exam questions. Which of the following are ways of transferring a risk? And here you should notice the word which of the following. So they want you to put multiple answers. Now, this is a situation which you should not see. The questions should be multiple choice. They should only be asking for one answer. And you will see that this one is a square. You should see all of the questions in your exam as a round button. And the difference is that in this one you can put tick marks, whereas the round selection button, if you know a little bit about computer programming and the screens, you can only do one tick. If I tick this one and later on tick this one, then the first one will disappear. I can only have one active. So you should not see questions that requires multiple answers. So instead, the question is valid. The question they are asking here is a valid question, but you should see it formulated in a different way. And it should say, which of the following are ways of transferring risks? And you should have one selection, either this, or this, but it can only be one. In this case, the ways of transferring risk are number one. So you will see here that you have insurance, you have warranty, outsourcing is same, warranty is there, eliminate, reduce, mitigation. So they're trying to confuse you by making similar choices. So again, if you see this question, go through them one by one. Which of the following are ways of transferring risk? So you are transferring risk. They are asking transfer. So mitigation is an action you take to reduce the risk from happening, or the impact if the risk happens. So this one, it cannot be. So by eliminating those two, you already now eliminated these. Further, they're saying transferring risk. So they're not asking you to change the risk, impact, or probability. So reduce impact, no. Eliminate the risk, that's not transferring. That means you are changing the risk. So now you already eliminated this, you can now eliminate this. So left with one choice. Insurance, yes, that's a way of transferring risk. Warranty, yes. Or outsourcing. It's all responses where you are not changing the probability or the impact, but you are transferring the risk away from you to someone else, which is better equipped or have means to handle it if it happens, and then it is not your problem anymore. So again, this is a way of analyzing the risk, analyzing the question and finding the correct answer. Let's have another look. A risk trigger is what triggers a contingency response. And here you don't have choices, you have a true or false. So I apologize that the question here, it should be round. So you can put either or. You cannot tick both. So a risk trigger is what triggers a contingency response. Correct. That is what a risk trigger do. So again, here you need to have the definition trigger on your definition sheet, and you need to know contingency response. What is it? What triggers it? And so on. So key here is that you need to know the key terms. Again, you might have the answer on your sheet, your preparation sheet that is in front of you, which you have spent the first 15 minutes of your exam preparing, and you have memorized and refined throughout your study preparation. Or you might not, and therefore you might mark it if you are not sure. You might have the answer later on. It might be that you get a question that says a contingency response is triggered with the following risk trigger. And that, if you're reading that, so risk trigger is triggering the contingency response, meaning, so a risk trigger is what triggers a contingency response. If you read that question further down the exam, write down this on your notepad or the paper that is available to you, and when you get back, you need to now go and look for this question. Now it might be marked, it might not be marked. So you might, after you have addressed the marked questions, you might need to scroll through. But again, this is a very valid example. Let's have a look at another question. What are the two main types of project reserve accounts? Again, apologize, it should be round. There is only one of these that is the right answer. So what are the two main types of project reserve accounts? So we have management in all four. So we can rule that out. You don't need to worry about that. Management reserve is in all four possibilities. So forget about that. Mitigation reserve, cost reserve, contingency reserve. So this is really what is the key. Is it this, this, or this? Okay. Let's go back to the question. What are the two main types of project reserve accounts? Okay, that doesn't help you because you have reserve, 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 reserve. Okay, do we know anything that is called a contingency reserve? Do we know anything that's called a cost reserve? Do we know anything that's called a mitigation reserve? So the right question, or the right answer, is that is a contingency reserve and a management reserve. So the point here is you need to read the question very carefully and do not let similar words confuse you. Now, why is it the contingency reserve? Because the mitigation reserve, cost reserve, there is no such thing. Mitigation is a response to a risk. You can do a mitigation action, but there's nothing called a mitigation reserve. A cost reserve, cost is cost to your project. You have revenue, you have cost, is a definition. There is nothing called a cost reserve. The only two correct ones is management and contingency. And management you don't need to worry about because that's in all four. So you need to look for the word contingency, which means that this one is the correct one. So again, read the questions carefully. Try to rule out. In this case, you don't need to worry about management reserve. Forget about it. It's in all four. So do an analysis. Try to rule out what it cannot be. Similar as we did on the last question. So these are some of the examples of questions that you can expect during the exam. So before we do the summary, I want to stress one thing, and that is you should not have multiple questions. Which one of the following are the correct? You should not see that kind of question. It should be multiple choice. Which of the following is the correct answer? Only one. So with that, let's do the summary. So after completing this video, you should now understand the type of exams questions you can expect during your risk management professional exam and some useful advice on how to help analyze and answer the questions. So apply your logical thinking, study hard, use your worksheet, use the paper available, use the functionality in the tool where you can mark questions, and you will be fine. And as said in the earlier session, you will not pass unless you study and you know the knowledge. We can only help you study effectively and shortcut a few places, but it is what you know. If you have no experience in risk management or project management, it is very unlikely you will succeed taking this exam, nor will it be of any benefit for you. With that, best of luck with your exam. Do let us know if you pass. Thank you very much.